Hello guys, welcome to another video. Have you ever felt like playing Tomb Raider or Uncharted is like stepping in an Indiana Jones movie? Today we are going to explore how indie inspired these games and look at some moments that feel like they were taken right from his adventures. Let's start with references to the first Indiana Jones movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark. In the very first Tomb Raider game, we can see the Ark of the Covenant right in Lara's home. How cool is that? At the start of the Indiana Jones movie, in the first tomb scene, there are so many traps that show up later in Tomb Raider games. For example, the vertical spike trap, does it look familiar? I remember seeing it in Tomb Raider Legend during the Ghana level, but maybe it's also in other Tomb Raider games that I don't remember. And there's also this part where Indy jumps across a gap using his whip, which instantly made me think of Lara in Tomb Raider Legend. And then, while Indy is dodging those darts, there's a face carved into the wall that looks almost identical to the one you see in the second level of the first Tomb Raider. And the golden idol Indy grabs, you can see the same one in Lara's artifact room back at her mansion. And of course, after Indy takes the idol, the whole place starts falling apart. It's a classic. It's just like what happens in Tomb Raider 1 when everything starts crumbling around you after grabbing the Scion. Then we have the darts, Lara's first ever trap in the opening moments of the first Tomb Raider game. If you played the original Tomb Raider games, you know all about timed doors. Some people love the challenge, while others find them super annoying. But guess what? This mechanic seems inspired by Indiana Jones. There's even a moment where Indy just barely makes it in time, like we've all experienced with those stressful doors in the games. And finally, the most iconic reference from this scene, the boulder. When Indy has to run for his life, it's hard not to think of Lara doing the same in Tomb Raider 1, after grabbing the first piece of the Scion. Speaking of boulders, here's a fun little Easter egg you might have missed. In Tomb Raider Anniversary, during the Qualopek's tomb sequence, there's a boulder that falls, and if you look closely you will spot a whip and a head stuck in it. Could it be Indy's? Did he escape and just lose his stuff, or it was a game over for him? And it doesn't have anything to do with this, but every time I see a giant boulder, I always think of Chris in Resident Evil 5. After escaping the tomb, Indy jumps onto a plane with his friend to get away from a dangerous situation. This reminds me so much of the opening of Uncharted 1, where something pretty similar happens. Another thing Indy and Nate have in common is those classic reunions with their friends to go over their findings and figure out what to do next. And how about this? Indy says he doesn't believe in hocus pocus, which totally remind me of Von Croy in Tomb Raider 4 because he also uses that expression.
For a long time, I don't believe in magic, a lot of superstitious hocus pocus.
Ach, ancient hocus pocus. Forget this nonsense and come over here.
Speaking of Tomb Raider 4, there is a part with miniatures of locations Lara has visited in the game, or will visit in the future also. That scene feels like it took some inspiration from Indiana Jones. In Cairo, Indy fights off enemies while locals casually watch from the sidelines. That remind me of the similar situation in Uncharted 3, where Nate is exploring Yemen and gets into trouble. He fights some mercenaries. There's also the moment where someone poisons Indy's food and his friend spots a dead monkey just in time to stop him from eating, saying, "Bad date."
Bad dates.
That line gets a nod in Uncharted 4 when Nate and Sam are checking out the tombstones.
Bad dates.
There's also a scene in the movie where Indy gets dragged by a jeep using his whip. A similar thing happens in Uncharted 4, and here's a thing that always happens. They find something exciting, but then the bad guys show up, take what they want, and leave them trapped in a dangerous situation. That happens a lot in Uncharted games, and in Tomb Raider Underworld, for example, it happened when Lara finds her first glove. So this seems also something inspired by Indiana Jones movies because it also happens there. In the movie, Marion uses a machine gun, which makes me wonder if that inspired the same kind of weapons in Uncharted 2 that we can use. And in the same scene, Indy fights a huge tough guy. It could have been the inspiration for those big, heavy enemies in Uncharted 3. The part where Indy chases after the trucks on a horse, well, that totally has Uncharted 3 vibes. We do the exact same thing in that game, and it's such an epic moment. And let's not forget another classic trope shared by both Indiana Jones and Uncharted games. The bad guys always capture the protagonist's girl, and yeah, later you have to save her. There's a spike trap in Uncharted 2 that's super similar to the one in the second movie. The movie ends with Indy and Willie in a village and they almost kiss. Funny enough, Uncharted 2 ends in a village too, with Nate and Elena having a heartfelt moment, and this time they actually kiss. Time to move to Indiana Jones 3, and in this movie one of the artifacts is a cross that Indy has wanted to find since he was a kid. It looks like Nate's journey in Uncharted, where he's been like searching for something tied to a cross since he was young. As a kid, Indy is chased by mercenaries because he stole an artifact that they wanted. The same thing happens to Nate in Uncharted 3 during his flashback scene. Both in this movie and in Uncharted 4, Indy and Nate go through a phase where their lives feel boring. They are stuck doing regular jobs, but deep down they are itching for an adventure. There's also a scene where Indy tries to save his father, who's been kidnapped by the bad guys, and it reminds me so much of Uncharted, where Nate has to rescue Sully, that is also captured, like the setting, the place, the things that happen, and even like in the end, Indy's father, he leaves the tank in a horse with a local friend of Indy, and in Uncharted 3 it happens exactly the same, literally. So, and here's a fun connection. At the end of Uncharted 4 we see that Nate has a dog named Vicky, a nod to Victor Sullivan.
Hey, Vicky.
This could be a reference to the final scene of the movie, where we find out that Indiana got his name from his dog.
We named the dog Indiana.
One of Indy's most iconic lines, repeated across the movie, is "That belongs in a museum."
That belongs in a museum!
In Uncharted 4, if you choose the option "It's not yours" during the fight with Nadine, Nate delivers the same line.
Did you know all the artifacts here are stolen? They belong in a museum.
Definitely a fun nod to Indiana Jones. In Tomb Raider 4, if you check out one of the spike traps, you will find a skeleton with a whip and a hat, hinting that Indy might not have been so lucky with that trap. And later, in Lara Croft and Temple of Osiris, there's another skeleton wearing an outfit just like Nate's from Uncharted 3. In Tomb Raider 1 and Anniversary, there's a level in Egypt where you can grab an item by jumping onto an invisible platform. This feels like a clear reference to Indy's leap of faith moment when he walks across an invisible bridge. Seeing all these similarities between the Indiana Jones movies and the games, it's so interesting. It's also clear that Nate kind of acts more like Indy than Lara. Like, Nate cracks jokes, gets beaten up a lot, it's clumsy, has different love interests, and ends up in wild situations. Lara, on the other hand, feels like her unique character, more serious and super skilled and highly experienced. I'm not saying this as a bad thing. I love all three characters, and in a way I feel like Nate is very similar to Indy in terms of personality and situations that happen to him, but at the same time he's also kind of his own character. If you watched the movies and play the games, I think you probably know what I'm trying to say. Do you know any other references? If so, share them in the comments. I'd love to hear about them. Like always, if you liked the video, don't forget to leave a like to help the video reach more people, and subscribe for more videos. Until next time, bye bye!